Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right in for a technical deep dive on zero trust architecture. We'll be focusing specifically on remote and privileged access, and we're going to stick to the key industry standards to guide us.
So here's the plan. We'll kick things off by looking at why the old ways of handling remote access are failing us. Then, we'll get into the nuts and bolts, the core principles of zero trust, the components that make it tick, and some common ways it's deployed. After that, we'll zoom in on privileged access, which is a huge one, and wrap up with a practical look at how you can actually start on this journey.
All right, let's start with the real problem we're all facing. For years, security was all about building a strong perimeter, a castle wall. If you were inside, you were trusted. If you were outside, you were not. But with remote work, BYOD, and cloud apps everywhere, that line has completely blurred. Access can come from anywhere, which makes that old location-based trust model, well, pretty much useless. And this is the fundamental mindset shift. We have to stop trusting the network itself and instead start verifying every single request. So instead of giving a user broad access to a network segment, we put our controls, think of them as identity-aware proxies, right in front of the actual applications and data. This way, every request has to prove itself, no matter where it's coming from. Now, to make sure we're all working from the same playbook, we're going to lean on the definitions from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST. Their special publication 800-207 is really the authoritative guide here, giving us a solid, abstract definition for zero trust architecture. Okay, I know that sounds a little academic, so let's unpack it. The two phrases that really jump out are least privilege per request and network viewed as compromised. This is huge. It means we operate under the assumption that attackers are already on our network. So instead of broad access, we grant access to one specific thing for one specific session and nothing more. That's what stops an intruder from moving laterally and taking over everything. These tenets are really the pillars of the whole thing. First, all communication gets encrypted, period. Doesn't matter if you're in the office or at a coffee shop. Second, access isn't a log in once and you're good for the day deal. It's rechecked for every single session. The policies themselves are smart and dynamic, looking at things like your identity and your device's health. And most importantly, we are constantly monitoring everything because in this model, nobody and nothing gets a free pass. So you might be wondering, how does a system actually make these super fast per-session decisions? The real elegance of the architecture is that it separates the decision-making brain from the enforcement muscle. Let's see how that works. This diagram from NIST really clarifies it. See how it's split? The control plane up top is where the thinking happens, and the data plane below is where the action happens. So a user, the subject, tries to get to a resource. The request gets stopped by a policy enforcement point, or PEP. The PEP then basically asks the control plane, hey, is this person allowed to do this right now? And that brain is called the policy decision point, or PDP. This is the central logic hub. It takes the access policies you've written and mixes them with all sorts of real-time data, info from your identity provider, your endpoint security tools, even threat intelligence feeds, to make a really smart, context-aware decision about that specific request. Then you have the PEP, the policy enforcement point. This is the muscle. You can think of it as a smart gateway or a proxy that sits right in front of your apps. It gets the yes or no verdict from the PDP and then does the work. It either opens up that secure connection or it slams the door shut. It's the component that's actually on the front lines, enforcing the rules. Okay, so we've got the theory down, the core principles, the logical parts. Now let's get practical and look at two of the most common ways this stuff is actually deployed for remote access out in the real world. The first model is pretty common. It uses a software agent that you install on your user's devices. This little agent is smart. It grabs the connection requests and shoots them over to a gateway, which acts as our PEP. That gateway checks with the PDP, and if everything looks good, it creates a secure, encrypted tunnel directly from the user's laptop to the resource they need. This second popular approach is a resource portal. Now, the big difference here is there's no agent to install. The user just opens their web browser and goes to a specific portal. That portal is the PEP. It handles the authentication, it can check the device's posture, and then it grants access to applications, usually by proxying them right through the portal itself. So, which one's better? Well, it's a classic it depends situation, a trade-off. The agent-based approach gives you way more visibility and continuous control over devices that your company owns and manages. The portal model, on the other hand, is way more flexible. It's perfect for things like contractor access or when you have a BYOD policy and can't install software on everyone's personal machine. All right, let's take everything we've talked about and apply it to one of the most critical areas in any company, privileged access management, or PAM. We're talking about your admin accounts, the keys to the kingdom. These are the accounts that can cause the most damage if they get into the wrong hands. And really, you can't overstate the risk here. Privileged accounts are what every attacker dreams of getting their hands on because they unlock your most critical systems and data. So applying zero trust principles to these sessions isn't just a good idea, it's an absolute must. You know, the zero trust idea of continuous monitoring fits perfectly with really strict compliance rules. Just look at PCI DSS. It demands that you log every single thing an admin user does. Who accessed what actions they took, even who looked at the logs. A zero trust architecture for PAM is tailor-made to help you automate gathering all that crucial evidence. But look, this is about so much more than just taking a compliance box. The whole point of all this logging and monitoring is to get the real-time visibility you need to spot weird behavior. You know, like an admin logging in at 3 a.m. from a country they've never been to. You want to be able to catch that and respond before a little problem turns into a massive breach. So this all sounds pretty compelling, right? But how do you actually get there? This is really important to understand. Zero trust is not a product you can just go out and buy. It's a strategic shift and it's a gradual migration. You absolutely do not have to rip and replace your whole network overnight. Nobody does that. The journey to zero trust is almost certainly going to have a hybrid phase where old and new models live side by side. The best way to start is to pick one specific high-value area. For a lot of organizations, that starting point is securing remote access for employees or locking down access to their cloud apps. And that really brings us to our final and, honestly, most important point. While all the technology to build a zero trust architecture exists right now, a successful project is often less about the tools you buy and more about rethinking your access control processes from the ground up and making sure your people, your teams, are trained and ready for this new way of thinking. It's really a journey for the whole organization.